will be your MC for today. The quick visual description of me is I am a light brown-skinned man with a white shirt on which says respect my existence or respect my resistance. I am also bald, and I'm wearing shorts, so there's that. To begin today's march, a quick agenda. I will be giving a land acknowledgement, then we move on to some background and housekeeping, our speakers, then we march, and finally a celebration at Grange Park. We at TDPM recognize our privilege to be on this land and learn and help educate others about the traditional knowledge and worldview of those who came before us and who continue to foster recognition between us all in hopes of knowing better and being better. We are grateful to be based in the city of Toronto, which is traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples and their lands, which is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We want to acknowledge that Toronto is covered under Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaty. We in turn extend our respect to all First Nations peoples, Inuit and Métis peoples, for the valuable past and present contributions to this land. We know as Turtle Island, to this land we know as Turtle Island. I also recognize and respect the cultural diversity that Indigenous people bring to all cities across Canada and across Turtle Island. Our North American history speaks to the genocide of Indigenous peoples and culture. I believe in the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, nobody's free until everybody's free. I stand dedicated, yes, thank you for that. I stand dedicated to this task and encourage you to do the same. Thank you. Miigwech. As we are sure you are all aware, land acknowledgements are a slippery slope. They can have the ability to reclaim identity and be radical. However, they can also be very performative, both in and outside of activist spaces. Access statements found on every ableist non-profit's website often operate in a similar fashion. Disability as a category is the child of colonization, enslavement, and the exploitation of Turtle Island and its peoples. From drapetomania to feeble-mindedness and hysteria, from chattel slavery to residential schools, from institutions to prisons. Disability was built to reinforce racism and capitalism. Disablement is the primary tool our colonial capitalist system uses to control people, destroy economies, and cause permanent scars to communities and cultures around the world. This genocidal institution built to house and erase Indigenous peoples and disabled peoples were designed, built hand in hand. This violence is ongoing for both of our communities in order to label an other, in order to create a white supremacist standard of normal. I would also like to acknowledge the harm Canadian mining operations have done to Indigenous people across the world. 70% of the mining operations in Latin America are Canadian. This can no longer be ignored. We cannot overcome ableism without dismantling the colonial apparatus. Decolonization is not a passive act, so we invite you to support the Okinawa encampment on the north lawn of Queen's Park, right over there. Set up by the Indigenous Land and Water Defenders after Bill 5 was signed by Doug Ford and Mark Carney to promote their dangerous anti-Indigenous and anti-immigrant policies. These policies are also providing a threat to the environmental well-being of Ontario. More information can be found on Instagram at 8th Fire Rising. I also invite you to join the next Palestinian rally, which can be found on Instagram at PYM Toronto. We would like to take a minute to honor the disabled community members that we have lost. This year, we have lost an unbelievable amount of elders. We've lost Elder Wanda Whitebird. We don't know where to start with Wanda. From her work with incarcerated and drug-using communities, to her work at Anishinaabe Health, starting the traditional healing program, and working with those with HIV and AIDS, to her work with No More Silence, where led the annual Strawberry Ceremony in honor of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit peoples. Finally, her work in building an accessible sweat lodge on the Six Nation reserves and organizing and leading accessible sweats for disabled Indigenous community members. She was someone our organizers looked up to, someone who embodied the principles we try to live up to. The last speech Wanda gave at TDPM was in 2023. She spoke about the connection of all things. She spoke about the interdependence of all things, living, land, water. In that spirit, she did a lot of work in this dream to bridge communities and connect people and movements for all of our liberation. She was supposed to speak at last year's brunch, but didn't make it because she was ill. While we were hoping to have her back with us this year, the best way we know how to honor Wanda's memory is to commit ourselves to cross-movement solidarity and follow the wisdom and leadership of indigenous matriarchs. There is a big fight coming to Turtle Island, to indigenous communities, to the Ring of Fire. It is all of our duties to not just stand with indigenous communities, but figure out how we can best serve this moment. We all have a duty to the indigenous peoples of this land, and to the land, and the water, and the sovereignty they are fighting to protect. On the American side, we have lost a legend in the disability community. Patricia Byrne, who taught our organizers many of the values we live by, alongside Sins Invalid and countless others in the Bay Area, not to mention many disability movements internationally. They awakened an entire generation of disabled youth. As disabled movements grow and youth are finding out about disability justice on social media and elsewhere, it's going to be more important than ever for us not to lose our political soul, to not let our movement be co-opted by those who just want a seat at the table, no matter whose blood they're covered in. What Patricia Byrne taught us is that we will always have free food at this march. We will always have access services, including harm reduction. We will always invite and advertise our march to houseless and drug-using communities. We will center the liberation of the most marginalized, and we will fight to ensure disability capitalists do not make disability pride what carceral capitalist queer pride has become. We have to choose who and what we support with our presence, with our money, and our images. In Toronto, we have also lost Jess Sash. Jess Sash was a disabled artist and activist who inspired many of our organizers with their art pieces, from American Able to Freedom 2. Though we never got to meet them, we always hope to. Our heart goes out to their loved ones, and we thank them for the impact they've had on this city. Additionally, we have lost Isabella Gant from POOF, Protecting ODSP and OW funding. Well known for holding small protests where she would stop streetcars to bring attention to the plight and conditions we face. She has been one of our speakers in the past, and she chose May this year. We hazard a guess that some of you joining us from other movements and communities have been invited to May parties this year. May is casting a dark shadow over our community. It is eugenics. And one day, others were right about this inhumane policy. They sponsor our suicides, and we are losing people whose futures we can never imagine or know before they have a chance. Before they have a chance to do more or survive or get to another point of their lives. To the disabled youth out there, hold on. Hold on, hold out and find your people. If you can, try and survive. There are radical tricks out here, and we are waiting for you. We would like to do a moment of silence to honor those who we have lost this year, and remember their lives and think about how we can honor their legacy. We want to introduce you to TDPM, especially if you've never been with us before. The Toronto Disability Pride March began out of Occupy Toronto in October of 2011. It began as a small crowd of 100 people at City Hall as a fundamentally anti-colonial, anti-police, and anti-capitalist gathering of disabled folks. Though the march has grown throughout the years, we marched for many of the same reasons that brought us together when we first started. Issues of accessible housing, transportation, legislative poverty, surveillance, segregation, institutionalization, and police violence. TDPM is and has always been an intentional form of activism striving to address the intersectional nature of disability, while reshaping the meaning of what disability justice and collective liberation can be in Toronto and across Turtle Island. Now we want to move to some housekeeping and community participation items. First, access. We want to introduce and thank our ASL English interpreters, Kesha, Alex, and Nico, and our PSWs, personal support workers, Celie and Renee. If you have any access questions or issues, please find Yunmi, she, her, our access coordinator, who's wearing a bright orange shirt and a pink hat, standing at the folding tables to the canopy at the front. There. Yunmi, please wave to the people. We have sighted guides if you need assistance during the march. We also have volunteers if you need any help throughout the march. At that table, you can receive a spot on the accessible bus. We have a minibus with spots for wheelchair users and spots for ambulatory users. Yunmi is making a list, and we will notify you when it's time to board. That table will also have water, drinks with electrolytes, granola bars, masks, earplugs, flyers, and large print version of the flyers. Additionally, we also have umbrellas at the front desk here, so that if you need to get away from the sun, there are umbrellas right there. Second, we trust that you are aware that many of us are living with precarious health. Our movement is built on codependence and cross-disability solidarity principles. If you give a shit about our lives, we ask that you wear a mask, even if you do not elsewhere. We want to thank Mask Block and Surge Toronto for helping us. They are currently handing out masks in the crowd, and there will also be masks at the access table at the front. Next, for the third year in TDPM's history, today's march is an abolitionist march. We have experienced marshals and volunteers who will help ensure safety while marching alongside with legal observers and people trained in first aid. If you need general assistance, please find out a volunteer in white shirts wearing a TDPM volunteer button. If you need a marshal, they are in high visibility vests. Additionally, we have legal observers in orange hats among us. The number for the legal observers is live and in the pamphlet. Finally, this year we have a TDPM crisis intervention team comprised exclusively of racialized mad psychiatric survivors. By us, for us, we look after each other. And they're in that tent on my right. The team provides peer support, a friendly listening ear, conflict intervention, mediation, and de-escalation. They try to co-create safety based on your definition and understanding of what is safe. However, we have some team limits. TDPM team limits. They refer to other members of the broader team and community for emergencies and when they get overwhelmed themselves. They work as a team and will turn the page. Do their best, and they will do their best to not call the cops. Again, the crisis intervention team has a live phone number that can be found in the pamphlet. Additionally, our fundraiser is live. Please donate to us if you want. Please donate to help us keep the march going and keep improving access. This is an example of what collective work can look like. TDPM is for us, by us. We are a grassroots organization. 100% of all funds raised go towards the cost of the annual banner making party and Disability Pride March. Our funds pay for food, drinks, art supplies, printing, and access services, such as ASL interpretation, accessible buses, and personal support workers. If you can, please e-transfer torontodisabilitypride.com at torontodisabilitypride@gmail.com to help keep us marching and improving access. Now, we have one of the most exciting moments of the march, the speakers! I am so honored to introduce our first speaker, Dev Ramsawak, I apologize, they, them. Dev is a disabled and non-binary multidisciplinary storyteller and producer. They are one of the founders of the CRIP Collective, which uses art and education to facilitate connections within the disabled community and engage in disability justice. Their short films have been streamed at many festivals, including the Caribbean Tales Film Festival, Inside Out Film Festival, Toronto Queer Film Festival, and Real Abilities Film Festival. Their work has been published on Chatelaine, CBC, Them, Extra, and other publications. They're even included in the Disability Visibility Anthology edited by Alice Wong. Okay.
I'm a short, brown, transmasculine person in their 30s. I have chin-length, wavy hair that is dyed purple and pink. I have a mustache, goatee, a nose ring, and a septum piercing. I have tattoos on my arms and neck, and I'm wearing red glasses. I was born with lipomyelomeniingocele spina bifida, but it took me years to identify with being disabled. The representation I grew up with was predominantly white, cisgender, and heterosexual, and most conversations about disability reflected that. But I'm none of those things. The representation that I needed wasn't just about finding disabled people who looked like me. I'm a descendant of indentured Indians brought to the Caribbean, which has complicated my relationship with disability. Indo-Caribbeans were just seen as bodies to extract labor from. How do I reconcile this identity with this lineage of survival through labor? This has led to stigmas and internalized ableism within my culture. And this experience is, of course, not exclusive to Indo-Caribbeans. But like many other colonized communities, we are more likely to experience disability and chronic illness. My family tree is riddled with diabetes, cancer, and heart disease, though I'm the only one who actually identifies as disabled. Medical racism leads to higher rates of misdiagnosis and a lack of preventative care, and the conditions imposed on colonized peoples historically can lead to predispositions to disability and chronic illness being passed down through epigenetics. Trauma and poverty can also lead to both physical and mental illnesses through the disability poverty cycle. We're in a housing crisis, and gentrification in neighborhoods like Thorncliffe Park are disproportionately pushing out racialized families and communities. Many Torontonians are relying on food banks for food. This takes a physical toll on people's bodies and minds. In fact, I've heard of someone developing a heart condition from the stress of an eviction. Disabled people are also more likely to live in poverty. ODSP doesn't provide enough to meet average rents, much less pay for basic needs. Many of our unhoused neighbors are disabled. These are the perspectives that are being left out of mainstream disability representation. It is not a coincidence that over the last few years, all levels of our government have instituted policies that have downplayed COVID, a mass disabling event that impacts disabled people, poor people, and racialized people at significantly higher rates, that are targeting encampments and supervised consumption sites, that are attempting to criminalize our ability to protest against the genocide of Palestinians, that have expanded eligibility for MAID more than they've expanded public support programs for disabled people. We are being shown that our political leaders would rather get rid of anybody they deem worthless than help us. If we don't fight for ourselves and each other, no one will. Our oppressions are intertwined, and so is our liberation. Queer communities, indigenous communities, communities impacted by incarceration revolutionized our healthcare through HIV activism. Disabled activists and the Black Panther Party worked together in the 70s during the 504 sit-ins to revolutionize disability legislation. Disability justice can only exist by dismantling all our oppressive systems, by caring for each other, by protecting each other, by demanding justice for each other. As Maya Angelou, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Emma Lazarus have reminded us throughout history, none of us can be free until we are all free.
And now, our next speaker, Keith Welsh, they, she. Keith is a queer, disabled artist, community activist, and educator, and the other co-founder of the Crook Collective, so 2 for the price of 1. Their work focuses on the impact of ableism and oppressions on mental health and disability. They are focused on building communities of care and is creating an initiative to promote social inclusion, awareness, and policy recommendations for people with a range of disabilities.
Hello everyone. My name is Keith Welsh. I am a white, mid to late 30s non-binary person with brown hair, wearing a black shirt and blue jean shorts and sitting in a black and red polo wheelchair. I am here today as a sick and disabled educator and artist. I benefit from having class privilege as someone who was born into a middle-class family. My whiteness and my class privilege shape how I experience ableism. Like most of us here today, I have personal experiences of systemic ableism, and in particular, as someone heavily reliant on the medical industrial complex. I grew up in and out of hospitals. I have a chronic illness that fluctuates and progresses and always needs managing. Exactly 2 years ago today, I was living in the ICU on a ventilator. My body-mind was struggling to survive post-medically induced coma. Now I'm up here speaking to you all, and I can honestly say that I am grateful to be alive. I feel like I should be up here sharing how I survived, how I have lived with chronic illness and disability my whole life, using this opportunity to share some wise lessons. But how I survived was not due to some inner strength or determination that I uniquely have. No, we all have that. And as disabled humans, we know the determination that life takes because we have no other option but to survive in the minds and bodies we have. But what I had was systems of support. Community support, family support, financial support, housing support, funded healthcare, and the list goes on. I survived, and now I feel like I am starting to thrive, in part because of having access to class privilege. When I was incredibly sick, it seemed like there was no hope and no path forward. I thought about accessing medical assistance and dying, but I was able to keep pushing through because I had that support. And I think of all the people who aren't here today, the ones who used MAID to end their lives, and the ones who have died so unnecessarily young because they did not have that support. I'm angry because I want everyone to have that support. I want to live in a world where resources are abundant and everyone gets what they need without having to prove anything. I am angry that governments are actively eroding our healthcare and social services. I am angry because the feds promised to lift disabled people out of poverty, but have let us down. So, as we try to topple capitalism, and as we dream of different worlds, let us start with small actions. Let us commit to community care and sharing resources. And in capitalism, that includes money. So my individual accountability is about recognizing my unearned advantages and working towards dismantling these systems. It can be daunting and uncomfortable and scary. It is so big. What could we possibly do as individuals? So as you know, I do many things, but one thing I'm recently committing to is sharing my money. And I invite those of you who can to also share your money. Start somewhere. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is about mutual aid, but beyond that, this is about redistribution and reparations. We live in this culture of hoarding what we have, being secret about it. There are these ideas about saving for the future because you will, quote, never know, unquote. But what if instead we trusted community? We trusted our neighbors. What if we knew other people would have our back in the hardest of times? So I challenge you, take stock of what you have and name it. Noticing how not all power and privilege are static, how they may change throughout your life depending on your situation. Right now, I have a few part-time jobs. I have a supportive family who live in another country but are able to help me out financially from time to time. I have friends who will bring me a meal or let me sleep on their couch. I have stable, market rate housing. Some of you may see these things as a lot, and some of you may see these things as not enough, especially in Toronto. But for the last 3 years, I have been redistributing 15% of my income each month. This is a small way for me to be accountable and ensure mutual relationships within our community that center interdependence. If you're unsure if you have extra to share, the first thing to do is start talking about it. I'm happy to talk to you. Feel free to reach out to me. You can also check out an organization called Resource Movement, who I've recently been working with, who can help you learn ways to redistribute your money. And remembering that money is only one thing, and one thing that many disabled people do not have. So if you don't have money, there are still ways you can show up. What can you share? Can we share our homes, our food, our skills, our empathy, our laughter, our tears? Can we push ourselves to think creatively? So, let's take care of each other in the face of fascism, in the face of governments dedicated to eugenics through MAID, and harming us all around the world with this ongoing internal and external global polycrisis. Let's live our values of community care and interdependence. Let's be accountable to each other. Let's support each other. We have seen that systems will not save us. We will save us. So, before I go, I encourage you to talk to someone today that you've never spoken to before. Exchange numbers or Instagram with someone, and let's start to build the support systems for each other. Thank you.
Next, I'm excited to introduce Yolanda Bonell, she, they. They're a disabled, queer, mixed Ojibwe South Asian storyteller, facilitator, and proud citizen of the Anishinaabe Nation. She has fought for Indigenous sovereignty and governance and the rights of Indigenous peoples on Turtle Island. They are part of a collective of Indigenous artists who are continuously working to implement Indigenous methodologies in art spaces. This includes practices of care and disability justice in theater spaces. Yolanda.
So I'm going to describe myself first. I am a fat, brown-skinned, femme-presenting person. I have a keffeya headband. Is this a headband? Bandana, thank you. On my head, I'm wearing a pink, what we call kokum scarf, which is with flowers, and a blue dress. Ani Bojo, Yolanda Bonell Ndishnikas, Gijiba Mainga Nindigo, Makwa Gaye Migizi Nindodam, Fort William First Nation in Donjaba, Dagarondo Ninda. Hello, my name is Yolanda Bonell. My spirit name is Gijiba Maingan. I am Bear and Eagle Clan from Fort William First Nation, but I live here in Dagarondo. I am an Ojibwe citizen of the Anishinaabe Nation, mixed English, Scottish settler, and second generation South Asian from India on my father's side. I am also a proud, two-spirit, queer, fat, disabled storyteller, and an Aquarius, Gemini rising, Scorpio moon. I speak in my traditional language because I was told it makes my ancestors happy. And I speak it for my grandma, who felt that she needed to hide it and couldn't pass it along. I want to say miigwech, thank you to the whole Toronto Disability Pride March team for having me speak today, and miigwech to all of you for coming out. I think these events are so important to our communities, particularly those whose voices are intentionally oppressed or suppressed. The act of gathering is something that has been happening on this land for years and years. Ceremonies, celebrations, migrations, trades, negotiations, burials, all of it was happening on this land prior to colonization and the effects of white supremacy and capitalism. Migrations were particularly important as that movement was essential for the land to replenish. It was cyclical, rhythmic. Indigenous nations followed that rhythm. It was a collective heartbeat. And I'll tell you something about the land. She won't judge you. The land don't care what you look like, what you wear, who you identify as. She won't exclude you for your disabilities. In fact, she'll give you roots for the pain and leaves to heal your insides and outs. She'll offer up her wood for your cane. And I mean, you could make a scooter or a wheelchair out of birch bark, but I don't know how well that would hold up. So we're moving and we're grooving in that rhythm, not being judged. We're being cared for, we're caring for each other. Wait, sorry. We're caring for each other. Our most vulnerable are our most protected. And then what colonialism did was interrupt that rhythm and remove us from that land-body relationship. It put us all in a different rhythm, one of capitalism and human supremacy over the land. And that uncomfortable interruption has ripples stretching far back and far forward, and absolutely does impact us all, but has a deeper, more harmful impact for certain groups of peoples, particularly disabled folks. Mostly because that rhythm doesn't work with our natural movement, and it excludes anyone who isn't straight and white and able-bodied. Ableism was birthed from capitalism. Boom, capitalism. So now we're in this uncomfortable rhythm, and because we can't all keep up with it, it starts to leave many of us behind. And those who are in the front start to profit off keeping us behind them. And with the continued rise of fascism and the government-sanctioned justifications for genocides and ethnic cleansing, it puts us in an even more of a vulnerable position. The creation of this game, this race, this colonial project has made everyone sick. Sick with greed, sick with power, sickness of our minds and bodies. That interrupted rhythm throws our internal cycles off balance. The mind, body, heart, and spirit need to be in balance as well. I was told once, as long as the land is sick, so are we. And when we realize that the land has also felt that interruption, that act of being silenced and suppressed, like the buried waterways underneath us here, or being disposable or poisoned, then that sentiment rings deeply, deeply true. The colonial removal of us from the land, in turn, also removed us from our communities and the idea of communities. It placed the straight nuclear family at the forefront, which led the way for individualism, which, as we know, isn't good for anyone, as it then leads to isolation. And this is how we lose many of our community members. So then how do we bring ourselves back? Community is different now. It looks different, and it's not always safe. The poison of lateral violence exists, and it's loud, and it's dangerous. I think we have to build our own communities back, new ones, based on shared values and a return to the teachings of the land and how she resists and builds and holds. Because disabled queers have always existed alongside her and will continue to exist and thrive and grow from adversity the way she does. I would like to end with a quote from Dr. Karim Wafa al-Husseini, who says, "Empathy didn't vanish overnight. It was stripped away piece by piece until oppression felt normal and compassion became radical." And I'd like to add, let's work towards normalizing and uplifting compassion more than anything. Be safe, comrades, drink water, take your meds, and keep shouting to end all occupations. These empires will fall. ACAB, miigwech, and happy Pride.
A reminder, if you have any access questions or issues, please find Yunmi, she, her, our access coordinator, who is standing in front of the table or sitting next to the table at the canopy to the front. She's wearing a bright orange shirt and a pink hat and a funky cat hat as well. And now, I'm thrilled to introduce our final speaker, Brad Evoy, he, him. Brad is the Executive Director at Disability Justice Network of Ontario, or DJNO, and member of the Hullabaloo First Nation. He is a passionate advocate for marginalized communities, particularly people with disabilities, and discusses the intersection of systemic poverty and Canada's Medical Assistance in Dying, or MAID program. He has spent his career advocating for the rights of all disabled peoples in Ontario and beyond.
Thank you so much for that wonderful intro, friends. As mentioned, my name is Brad Evoy. I'm a multiply disabled member of the Hullabaloo Mi'kmaq Nation. I'm originally from, so-called Western Newfoundland and a guest on these territories. Now, as mentioned, many of you may know me through my work with Disability Justice Network of Ontario or Accessible Housing Network, but I'm going to be clear. This speech is for me. I'm just here as another disabled member of this community, a disabled communist. I'm here to share those thoughts with you today. It's not their fault what I say, I swear. But I'm honored to be here with you today. As others have really highlighted, we're standing at the heart of colonial power in this city, Queen's Park. A pink stone edifice that jabs like a wound on this land. Land which is and will always be the treaty territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territories of many nations, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, the Petun. And if we're here and talking about disability, as folks already have, we must also center the reality of colonial struggle on this land. The colonial state, whether it is through incentivizing capitalist profit today or continuing the violence which has marked colonial expansion throughout these territories, the vile realities of genocide, environmental racism, and constant new acts of disablement that surround us at all times. The provincial government has brought about more tools of violence against those most impacted in our communities, friends. They've passed new legislation just last month to turn your landlord into your drug cop, else they be accused of drug trafficking. I heard a few. There we go. Shame. Exactly, friends. They gave even more tools to the police to attack and criminalize unhoused disabled people with $10,000 fines and jail time for the crime of merely trying to survive. Thank you, friends. All while making it harder to protest in cities like here in Toronto. They've made it impossible for cities to pressure corporations and developers to build more accessible homes for anyone above the colonial building code. It's simply not allowed anymore. But do you know what is? Making even more profit off our backs as cheaply as possible for them. They're trying to bring police back into schools to threaten the lives of Black, Indigenous, and racialized disabled children, and working to arm special constables to make things like the TTC just a little more unsafe for our communities. They are making it more profitable to build long-term care jails while committing mass human rights violations in prisons all across the province. Just a few months ago, they let COVID and strep rip through Maplehurst in Milton, Ontario, until people got flesh-eating disease. Members of our very communities are dying inside and losing access to any real sense of justice. And instead of doing anything for us, The provinces and federal governments are turning on migrants, many of whom are underpaid, exploited care workers that we rely on, and indigenous nations at the very same time. It doesn't matter to them if we've been here since time immemorial, or we came here seeking something better for our families. All that matters is the power of capitalism, exploitation, violence, and the power to maintain that of the ruling class, the owning class, through white supremacy, ableism, and force. So we know that the very government whose legislature we now stand behind, because they kicked us off the front, we know that they are actively working to bring forward new violences, new extraction on indigenous peoples' territories, new colonial expansion here, and as supported by the federal government, continued imperialist expansion all over the world. We must also name, without hesitation or expectation of praise, that this place is one of the hearts of imperialism. When we talk about the violence, disablement, and death that we see in Congo, in Iran, in Palestine, and beyond, people often turn their ire and blame elsewhere. But we know in our hearts that so-called Canada and so-called Ontario are complicit in it all. Factories around the province and the country build weapons of death and disablement every single day. We know that the moral and financial cover for the violation of human rights of our disabled siblings all over the world are made here. And we also know that disabled communities here are not free from this complicity. The blood of our siblings around the world is on our hands, friends. We have failed them countless times, but it ends now. We will name it. We must name it for what it is. So, let's talk about one example around Palestine. We know that disabled organizations and movements have been silent in the face of genocide. We know that some have taken up money from organizations like the Azrieli Foundation, which funds countless projects on disability, care work, and related issues around the country and in Israel. And if it's done here, then friends, Azrieli funds it or aims to. But they are funded by the largest real estate and multi-sector organization in Israel and its sibling company in Canada. The Azrieli Group operates directly in the West Bank, running much of the infrastructure for the occupying force of Israeli settlements. And friends, we know this is but one example. We could talk about Access Now and Access Fest. We could talk about Jerry Schwartz and Heather Reisman's funding of disability and health research, while also funding scholarships for IOF members. We could talk about so much more. But people here on these territories who work in our communities are complicit with the death and further disablement of our siblings. This is simply fact. This is simply reality. Now we must remember the names of countless disabled Palestinians who have died in this genocide, like Mohammed Brar, Yazan El-Karnafe, Mohammed Al-Farah, Hasham Ghazal, Atta Ibrahim Al-Musquid, and countless more disabled and deaf Palestinians murdered by the IOF. Their deaths have happened through the bullets and bombs made here. Their deaths are justified through media here. Their deaths are obscured through the so-called charity that provides much for disabled people here. But this charity does not wash out blood, friends, and we cannot ignore it anymore. So I ask you, why do our own communities remain slow to act? I ask you how we can consider this acceptable years into genocide. We cannot. Disability justice, if that is what we truly believe in, is not merely a set of words. It is a set of material commitments that, while we may fall short of them, they are for us to live up to. We cannot continue to ignore that disability organizations on these territories ignore these realities while staking a claim to the same ideological and social foundations that we do. If you claim it, then we all must work to live it. Disability justice is not simply a more radical coat to put over the disability movements of the past. It is not simply a way to vaguely express our politics. It is anti-capitalist, it is anti-colonial, it is anti-imperialist. It is meant to make the comfortable uncomfortable. We are not here today, friends, to be comforted. We know ourselves are enough. It is the society around us that fails us. It is capitalism that fails us. It's these governments behind us that fail us. We are strong together, my friends. We have the power that they cannot hope to wield, but only we can use it effectively if we build things together. We have to be unafraid to speak the truths that we see before us. We have to be unafraid to be anti-capitalists. That's socialists, communists, anarchists, whatever you want to call yourself. But we must organize ourselves. We have to get ready, my friends. We cannot wait. Join an organization, join a party, join whatever group, and prepare. Whatever strategies or ideals you hold, get them ready, and get them ready now. We have to build a better world together, friends. We cannot wait. We must do so now. Unlike the ruling class, we build beautiful things together, friends, and that includes our political power. The pride that I hold today is pride in the power that we have together, the might that we have in our hands as working class, intersecting disabled movements of people in solidarity. But with that pride, I feel wrath, I feel rage, I burn for justice in this world, and I know that you do too. But we can do something about that, folks. We gotta build together. And look, even if the politicians aren't here today, if they're out in their summer homes, if they're, out enjoying a nice stroll, I want them to be able to hear you from Toronto to Ottawa and wherever else they might be. So if folks, just to close out, I want folks to repeat after me. When I say disability pride, I want you to say disability wrath. Disability.
Thank you, Brad, and that concludes our speeches for today. Please give a round of applause to our amazing speakers. And also, please give a round of applause to our amazing human mic stand, Claire, without whom we could not be speaking today. As we wait for the bus to load, to those joining us from other communities, we thank you for coming here today. We hope we will start seeing the interlocking natures of our oppressions as the key to our collective liberation, not a distraction from it. What happens to each of us has a butterfly effect that will affect every single one of us. Freedom for disabled people must mean collective liberation, and those of you joining from other movements must start including disabled liberation and resistance into your own practices. Our access is not optional. In what is essential queer crip wisdom, and what has never stopped being true at TDPM, is pride is a protest. We scream together, we rise together, we march together, and then we live our best lives and celebrate that we are still alive and together. At Grange Park, we will have some musical performances, along with food and celebration as part of Disability Pride. So please join us. To end this off, I want to say a few words from the heart. When I, Sievert, was growing up, I didn't know any other disabled people, none. When I was being studied at Sick Kids, I did it alone. I didn't see or know anyone else who looked like me. Standing in front of you all, I no longer feel alone. Low-key, it's actually a bit surreal. Looking at you all, I think of my Indian and Bengali ancestors who had to endure British colonization, the Great Bengal Famine, and the Bangladesh genocide. I think of my Ukrainian ancestors, whose home is now under military occupation by a foreign power. I would like us all to call upon the spirits of our ancestors, our families, friends, or whoever gives you strength and courage to stand up to the ableist, racist, classist, and cis-heteronormative powers that oppress us all and say no more. No more shall we allow them to kill us using MAID. No more will we allow our disabled children to be ignored, treated like helpless victims or test subjects in hospitals or institutions. No more will we allow our disabled family members in Palestine, Congo, Iran, Sudan, Tibet, or Haiti to be disposed of. Instead, today, we rise. Today, we march. Today, we fight. Now, we will make our way to the driveway behind us with the cue to start moving and marching, being the giant Disability Pride flag will start moving, and the drums will start. Happy Pride.